A lot of new grinders have come into the market recently, but this one from Timemore has really made me smile. This is the O78, which is a filter coffee grinder. There is an O78S, which is the espresso and filter version, coming to the market later this year. And we have provided feedback to Timemore on some of the features of the espresso side of things. They also have a smaller version of this in the O64, which has smaller burrs, and 64 being a very common size, opens the door to aftermarket burrs like the SSP. With the 64, you have the O64 being a filter grinder and the O64S being both espresso and filter. And that's going to be an interesting grinder. On Lance Hendrick's video of this grinder, which we'll leave a link on the comments down below, he said this was the best grinder before diminishing returns. And I'm sure as they come to market, a lot of other YouTubers are going to be reviewing this grinder and comparing them to the obvious comparables, the niche, the O, the EK. So who is this grinder for? Truth is, it's got a very broad demographic. The obvious answer is the home market, really focusing on the top end of the home market, the more refined end. But I do see this grinder also being a cafe staple. When the O78S comes out, which is the espresso 2 filter version, I see this being a grinder that sits alongside cafes for the filter coffee or the single dose espresso. Much like currently you get an EK, or if you think about Tampers, you get the puck on the market. So I really do see this becoming, down the line, a staple grinder. Before we dive into this grinder and see what makes it different, if you've been liking the content so far, please like and subscribe. It really helps us develop more content and bring more to the channel. By the way, Timemore have sent me this grinder so I could review it and send them feedback, which I have. Yet I have the ability to speak my mind, and this review is all me. So when it comes down to models, specs and colors, there's going to be a few different varieties. When it comes to colors, there's going to be black and white. And when it comes to models, there's going to be 2 models. One focusing on filter only and one focusing on filter and espresso. And within that, 2 different burr sizes, 78mm and 64mm. So on the model lineup, the O78 is a filter only larger burrs, O78S is a filter and espresso larger burrs. And the naming convention repeats itself in the O64s. So O64 being filter, O64S being filter and espresso. Now on the smaller burr version, which is the baby version of this, is where it really gets interesting. Timemore have patented the burrs on these grinders, but on the smaller version, they've also opening the door to people being able to use aftermarket burrs from manufacturers like SSP. And this is where it really opens the door to this grinder just being a grinder that's very adaptable to all kind of different coffees. And I find that interesting. This grinder is using a brushless motor with PID control, and it's just so quiet. Like, that's ridiculously quiet. Even when you got coffee grinding through it, as the grinder goes, that's very, very quiet. Now, I'm not sure if it shows on camera, but sitting next to it, I feel like it's the quietest grinder I've heard. Another cool feature is the adjustable RPM of this grinder, from 800 RPM to 1400 RPM, with the lower RPMs resulting in less fines and the higher RPMs with more fines. While we're talking fines, Timemore have patented what they call the fines catcher or fines cleaner. Effectively, what it does is they haven't gone for any anti-static device, but rather they're catching the fines and storing them here. And once you're done grinding and you remove the coffee out, you can then clean out those fines. So they've really changed the process, and it sounds simple, but that's really game changer. So on the fellow O, they've got an anti-static. What it does is it allows those fines to come into the dosing cup and keeps the grinders clean, so 0 retention. But on this case, it's actually catching the fines, and you can take it out of the coffee process altogether. And that's quite revolutionary and in fact patented. This does mean there's no need to RDT the coffee. Simply put the coffee in and grind out, catch those fines, dispose of those fines. When it comes to workflow, this grinder really is super simple. Dialing in, you got 36 notches. So it is a step grinder showing 18 numbers, and you do have a reference here on the lid. With 30 grams of coffee for filter setup, we're just pouring that in. You just hit the start button here and you can hear it grind away. Now we've done this at the lower 800 RPM and we haven't done RDT because we're letting the fines catch the fines. Taking that out, bringing this in and just letting those fines which have been collected be dumped out. It really is a super simple grinder and you got your coffee nice and clean here, ready to do your filter. When it comes to pulling it apart, it's also super easy. With the grinder, you got the dial here, which is just connected by magnets. So pulling it out, it's actually got a really nice weight and just a magnet here, which connects it all together. Now you have the pin here with the marking of the original position. Over time, if you have to reset the grinder, you can just simply take out that pin and put it into a different notch. If you did want to go back to the original setting, it's super easy. It's marked here, pin. So if you did take it out and don't know where you're at, you can easily find your position back. And you've also got the position 0 here. So you always know if you want to go back to the setting 0, got 0 lined up with a red notch here and the original pin position. To open it up, what we do is remove the pin and then unwind the whole front, just going counterclockwise. It's on a thread, so you just have to turn it quite a few times. Once out, you now have 6 hex screws here. So removing the 6 hex screws, the whole front unit will come out in one piece. One cool thing about the way they've set this up is when you do remove the 6 hex screws, pull it apart and put it back together. Now when you are putting it back together, you don't have to worry about the tension of all the screws being equal, because the way the mechanism's been designed, much like the bentwood coffee grinder, it won't affect the leveling of the grinder, even if some screws are tighter than the others. And that's a really cool design that means that really anyone can pull these apart. It doesn't no longer need to be a technician with getting the things at the right tension. That makes a big difference. No need to basically recalibrate. So pulling it out is super simple. You got a little lever here that you pull out, you push it in against the tension, get to the groove and just pull it out. And there you can see the whole mechanism, including the auger and the other burr just inside. So putting it back together, it's just as simple as pulling it apart. Makes it really easy with just one simple tool. And anyone can do this to either change the burrs, replace the burrs, or just give it a clean. So we're going to do a single cup pour over using 15 grams of coffee, which we're going to grind out at 800 RPM. Now the grind is super quiet and the fines catch has done its job and caught the fines, which we'll dispose of in a second. We preheated the vessel and we're going to be using 98 degrees water. It's a plastic vessel, so we're going to get that temperature up, and the preheating was actually quite quick. With a ceramic or glass, it'll take a little bit longer. Dropping in the 15 grams of coffee. Resetting that. Just giving it a little mound in the middle. So we're going to start the timer and give it 50 mils. We're gonna aim for all up 3-minute extraction. Just at 45 seconds, we're gonna add another 50 mil or 50 grams. And now we're gonna pulse on and off every 10 seconds. Another 50 ml again. That's it. Now we're going to let it roll out to 3 minutes. It should be quite a dry bed by then. There we are at 3 minutes. Just putting that onto dosing cup. Actually fits perfectly by coincidence. And just pouring that out. It's a super clean coffee. And I feel a lot of it has to do with the fines catcher. The grind size being so consistent and the fines out of the way really allow for a clean filter without having that build up around on the filter paper. The end result really is beautiful. For me personally, I'm excited to see when the 078S comes out and the espresso side of things, because I'm more of an espresso drinker. But as filter goes, this is super nice. So if they can do the same with espresso, I'm excited. So what does this grinder compare to? And I feel that it's a bit of a hard comparison. Firstly, not all 4 models have been released yet. We're only looking at the 078 being a filter only grinder. The direct comparison would probably be the Fellow Ode V2, but they're very different. Over here, you got a fines catcher when the Fellow's using an anti-static. Price-wise, this sits a little higher, but once you put SSP burrs into the Ode, the price gets narrowed down. And these are using larger burrs than the Ode. Now, when the espresso versions come out, being the 078S or 064S, that then opens up to comparison with things like the Niche, which now have a cult following. But once again, I feel like they're gonna be very different grinders. Vertical flat blade grinders with a fines catcher versus big conical burrs that produce quite a lot of fines. Now the workflow, both this and the Niche have amazing workflows, but the build quality on this Timemore really is in a league of its own. When it comes to a commercial sense, I feel like there'll be comparisons to things like the EK43 or the Bentwood, but they're leagues apart in price, but they're forming a very similar result. So I do see that this will end up in cafes, small footprint, quiet grinder, really performing way above its size. It'll be interesting to see once they're in market, where they end up sitting in the coffee grinder landscape. So the question is, would I buy one? It's an easy yes for me. From the moment I unbox this grinder, I just love the look and feel. I love design, I love well-built products, I love well-thought-of products, and products that perform this well. I think it really is the whole package. I'm very interested to see once it hits the market, what the comments will be on other YouTube videos, from our customers, from other people in the coffee industry. So yes, we will be selling these grinders, so I do somewhat sound biased, but I love design, I love beautiful things, and if you know me well, you know that's the case. Where do I see these fitting in? I really see these fitting in so many different aspects. In a home environment, once the espresso version's out, anything from next to a Rancilio Silvia to a La Marzocco. From a filter aspects next to pour over setups, or even batch brew like Moccamaster or Ratio pour over setups. And in a cafe environment, it really is a beautiful staple supplementary grinder. I do feel when a company nails it, they nail it, and they should be praised for what they've built. When it comes to price, I feel like these are well-valued machines, not super cheap machines. So they're not your couple $100 machine that you have at home, but for their price and performance, I feel like the value is unbeatable. So my question to you is, which grinders do you want to see the Timemore Sculptor compared to? The Ode, the Niche, the EK, another grinder? Let me know in the comments below and we'll try and make that video happen. And like always, if this video has brought you value, hit that thumbs up, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Thank you and see you on the next video.